morning, good afternoon. How many of you have been here yesterday? Raise your hand if you've been here yesterday. Well, almost everyone. Okay, very good. So we can go straight into which topic? What was the topic of yesterday? The gradual training, as it's called. Gradual training, gradual practice, which means that the Buddha's teachings is not something you just go in and straight away you go into deep waters. Like the ocean also is very gradual. As you go in, and first it's quite shallow, and go in further, it becomes deeper and deeper. And eventually it gets very deep. So the Buddha's teachings also is a gradual path, a gradual practice. And yes, there can sometimes be a bit of a cliff where you go deeper very fast, or something like stream entry or once return, where suddenly a lot of progress is made. But actually the practice is a very gradual one. So much so that one might not even know, yesterday how much have I progressed? The day before yesterday, how much did I progress? Because it's so gradual. The Buddha gives a simile in one of the suttas. It's like a woodworker who is using an axe that has a wooden handle. For day in, day out, he's logging, chopping the trees or something. And then after probably many months or even years of working, he looks at the wooden handle and then he sees the imprints of his fingers on that wooden handle because he's been holding it for so long time and so often with so much energy. But okay, now some of the wood has been worn away, you can say. But you cannot say, yesterday I've been wearing away that much, the day before yesterday that amount. You cannot say like that. But over time, you can see, something has happened. I can see my imprints of the fingers now in the wooden handle. So the same way, the 10 fetters, the samyojanas, they are also not just abandoned from one moment to another, but it's a gradual wearing away, a shaving off of layers, of defilements, impurities. Then the same principle the Buddha says, okay, how to practice the Dhamma towards liberation? So he laid down this gradual path, a path of practice. And yesterday we already covered many of the elements. Let us recap a little bit. What did we talk about yesterday? Which elements did the Buddha mention at the beginning? Do you remember any one of those? You can just shout out if you will know one. Doesn't have to be in sequence.
Morality, 5 precepts.
5 precepts, virtue. Yes. Virtue. What else?
Speeches, the right speech.
Right speech, right? What else? It started actually out with virtue, that's right. Dwelling restrained, patimokkha, seeing danger even in the slightest faults. Then the second step was undertaking the 5 precepts, yeah. Right speech was next. And then we have also something about eating only 1 meal a day, remember, especially for the monastics. So yesterday, no, nobody had dinner. Oh, yes?
Supposed to be today.
Supposed to be today. Okay, I will ask you tomorrow. She knows tomorrow I'm not here. That's why she says today, Bhante. Okay, so we covered the basics. Then the Buddha continues and says, also we have to remember, the Buddha speaks to monastics, to the monks and to the nuns. He abstains from dancing, singing, music and seeing entertainments. So for a devotee, this could be a practice you might undertake on special occasions, like on Uposatha day, a full moon day, a new moon day. But for the monastics, this is our regular practice, day in, day out. So we cannot just turn on the radio or go to YouTube and listen to songs and dance a little bit. So yeah, it would be quite strange. So dancing, singing, music, entertainments. Entertainments in the old times used to refer to going to the theater, seeing shows. Nowadays it would also include, of course, movies, going to the cinema, or going to what would that be? Yeah, theater, of course, the same. Shows. concert, right? To the zoo. Maybe zoo you could say, but if it's what's the other thing? But you have jugglers? Circus. Circus, right. So this is mainly for entertainment. So for monastics, of course, why is that actually not suitable? What is so bad about that? Distraction mainly, right? So the devotees support the monks with food, clothing, shelter, and then they go to the zoo and entertainment, they go to the circus, just for fun, right? So they're supposed to practice the Dhamma diligently and virtuously, and not spill away their time with useless activities. Of course, also some of those activities, like music, dancing, singing, they also can provoke a lot of attachment, craving, because we like the sound of the song, so that also can arouse emotions of attachment, clinging. Probably you have noticed also, sometimes you hear a song that you haven't heard for a long time, and immediately a memory will come along with that song, isn't it? A memory of a certain time period, of a certain person sometimes. And these memories can come sometimes with strong emotions. So again, if you just want to practice the path to liberation, you might want to avoid things that make you very emotional from one moment to another. So for monastics, we are not supposed to indulge in any of those things. Also he abstains from wearing garlands, smartening himself with scent or perfumes, and embellishing himself with unguents. So cosmetics, purification of the body, necklace, rings, these kind of things. How about a watch? It's a watch. Hard to say, huh? I don't have a watch. So most monastics nowadays, we also don't use watches for the sake, because it can be a piece of decoration or like an ornament. But on the other hand, it might also just be something that tells you the time. So a very simple watch would also be okay in that sense. So still, most monastics will have a watch of one form or another, but then they just don't wear it on the wrist. They might have it inside the pouch, then just look at it and put it back, more like that. And then nowadays, of course, many monks even have a phone. So on the one side, cannot have a watch. How much does a watch cost? A cheap one, maybe just 200 ringgit. But then you can have a phone for 700 or more. So even that would be allowable. So, but it is more about preventing cosmetics, ornaments, purification of the body. He abstains from high and luxurious sleeping places. Okay, we know that also from the precepts, right? So living just on a very simple straw mat or bamboo mat on the floor, not lying down on a high bed, a very soft cushioning. Sometimes the mattress is like this high. If you go to a hotel room, a very soft mattress. So again, for an ascetic, we would imagine they would just live very simply. And then the next one, he abstains from accepting gold and silver. So gold and silver, that was the currency at the time. Also precious stones, that would also come under the same category. So gold and silver nowadays also would include, of course, money of any form or shape. That's why monastics, we are not handling money. So then, how about modern payment methods? Credit card, check. Do you think that is suitable for monks? No. Yeah, no, also should not, of course. So even this list that we have here, it's actually not just for the Buddhist monks. These were already well-established practices even before the Buddha came along. Ascetics would abstain from most of those things. And the Buddha also has incorporated the same practices, maybe with some additional layers or nuances, also for his own monastic communities. He abstains from accepting raw grain. Raw grain, also raw meat. What is that about? Raw grain means you can grow your own crops, fields. So the monks could then otherwise make themselves independent, as is the case maybe in some other traditions, like the Japanese Zen tradition, right? The monks are supposed to look after themselves. Whereas according to our Vinaya rules, actually we are not supposed to grow our own crops and veggies and so on. So farming is not allowed for monks. So this is also to keep the monastics dependent on the laity. And first one would think, why is that a good thing? If somebody is dependent on others, isn't it better to be independent and be able to look after oneself? Yes, there is value in that, of course, also. But you can imagine if the monks can just do their own thing, grow their own crops, they would just disappear in the forests. They would not come out easily anymore because they can look after themselves, just keep the basics. You would rarely see anyone coming out and getting an opportunity to give dana or getting an opportunity to hear the Dhamma, because they would just disappear in the forest. But now, of course, they cannot just disappear in the forest because sooner or later they will become hungry. They will come out every day. And there's an occasion also where we meet, where there's an occasion, just like today, for Dhamma sharing. So the Buddha wanted the Sangha to be dependent so that they cannot just isolate themselves and disappear. And then society has no way of hearing the Dhamma, benefiting from the Buddha's teachings. Nowadays, of course, you could just go to YouTube, but back in the days, you depended on finding a monastic, typically, who could memorize some of the Buddha's teachings and then pass them on. So it was quite important that the monastics also make themselves available on these occasions. So except from accepting raw meat or raw grain. But also it doesn't accept women and girls, obviously. That wouldn't go well. Also abstains from accepting men and women slaves. So it comes from a time where slavery was still very common. And occasionally a devotee might just offer a bunch of slaves to the Sangha as professional kapias, so to speak. But then they have no choice. They're not devotees, who want to help and make merit. They have no freedom. They belong to their master. So again, that was not allowed for monks to accept. There's no rule, actually, interestingly, for as a normal householder. The Buddha didn't say you must not have slaves, but he did say you're supposed to treat your slaves, if there are slaves or servants in the household, to treat them well and give them time off and give them a fair wages. That he did mention, not to exploit them. So yes, so not accepting men and women slaves, also abstaining from accepting goats and sheep, fowl and pigs, elephants, cattle, horses and mares. So again, this would be livestock, or where you can then have your own farm, again make yourself independent, or maybe even sell the products that they produce or their meat. None of that will be suitable for monastic. And also you could imagine if you have to look after your field, your livestock and cattle and all the rest, you will be quite busy like a farmer. So when is he going to practice meditation, memorize the Dhamma? No more time left, right? So for those who dedicate themselves to the holy life, the Buddha recommends living very simply. You don't need many things. Okay, you will have to depend on others, but then whatever simple things they can offer, that's good enough. And then your whole day is free for Dhamma practice. So that was the Buddha's vision here. That's why he said, no monks, you cannot even cook, cannot store food, cannot do nothing. So we are quite useless, This monk. If you ever look for a husband or a wife, she cannot cook, she cannot plant anything, you have to offer her everything, she wants to eat, you have to come close to her and then offer it into her hands. Who would take such a wife? Who would take such a husband? But then the monks get away with it, it seems. So yeah, we are completely helpless and dependent like a 4-year-old child. But on the other hand, hopefully, at the right occasions, the monks also will either make themselves available by sharing the Dhamma, or at least, even if they don't share the Dhamma, they can be living examples of the holy life. A reminder of somebody who walks the path with full dedication. And this is also important. Not everyone needs to be a great speaker, great educator, teacher. We also need the monks who are practicing and really dedicating themselves to the practice, to the goal of Nibbana. So therefore also back in SPS, we do protect some of the junior monks. We're not getting them into giving a lot of Dhamma talks and Dhamma sharings, just to their own practice. And then let the more senior ones who have had all those opportunities already, maybe also having more experience, then we invite those for the Dhamma sharings. But in the first 5 years, 10 years, don't think of that, just do your practice. What else the monks are not supposed to do? He abstains from running errands at messages. No WhatsApp messages. That refers more to messages. You know, back in the days the monks were traveling, they were walking from one place to another, sometimes long distances. So then, when people know, you're going to this other village, like 10 kilometers away or even further, they would say, I have a friend over there or a business partner. Can you take a message along? Either they write down the message or they just tell it to the monk, please go over there and tell the person this or that. But then the monks will take over responsibilities. And then who knows, maybe they cannot find the person. Then they have to spend another day, 2 days, 3 days hunting down that person because they didn't have phones back then. So running errands and messages, again, is something the monks shouldn't get involved in. So for personal use, yes, they can support each other, or one monk could tell another monk to say something to the third monk. When he travels somewhere, that's okay. But they shouldn't become messengers, almost like a job for a lady or for people in general. Also, he abstains from buying and selling. So this refers not to livelihood, buying and selling items for profit. Again, the monks cannot do. He abstains from false weights, from false metals, false meshes. So you can imagine, like on the market, when people are selling veggies or fruits, and then they put them on the scale, and the scale shows 1 kg, okay, has some price, right? But actually the scale is a bit manipulated. It's probably just 600 gram, not 1 kg. But it shows, 1 kg. So this would be false measures, false metals. So it says the weight, I put the weight on there, same. But then actually it's fake. So again, making a livelihood by any of these means would be wrong for monastics. Also, they don't accept bribes or deceiving, defrauding, trickery, wounding, murdering, binding, robbery, plunder and violence. Well, obviously that's not quite suitable. Not just for monastics, even for a devotee. So this is the whole Sila chapter of right and wrong forms of livelihood. So looking at all of that long list of things that the monks are not supposed to do, there's almost nothing remaining anyway, right? What they can do. They can speak on the Dhamma, on the Vinaya, share the Dhamma, practice meditation. But in terms of earning a living, they cannot cook, cannot accept food, accept grain, so they're very dependent. But then also when you accept things from others, there also comes a responsibility, because people also expect the monks to practice the Dhamma. And I've spoken with many of our monks, and many of them develop a strong sense of gratitude for all the support you're given. It's actually quite astonishing. We are living far away from our home countries and are sometimes so well taken care of. And even back in Taiping, the people who come every day to feed us, they're not our relatives. They don't know us. So it's quite astonishing that you can survive at a far distant place and people look after each other. So naturally the sense of gratitude arises. And then with that can also be a strong motivating force for the Dhamma practice, for meditation. Let me use this energy well. Even though maybe at some point, you might feel a little bit tired, or maybe sick, or a bit weak, but then I cannot just lie down the whole day and do nothing. At least let me try to make some effort. Of course, when we are sick, it's completely okay also to take a rest. But generally speaking, remembering, I've been eating the food of those who have given that from their own generous heart and intentions, that also arouses a sense of urgency. Let me use this energy and practice the Dhamma. Then the Buddha speaks of contentment. One becomes content with the robes to protect the body and alms food to maintain his stomach. And wherever he goes, he sets out, taking only these with him. Just as a bird, wherever it goes, it flies with its wings as its only burden. So too, the bhikkhu becomes content with robes to protect his body and alms food to maintain his stomach. So very light, right? Doesn't have a lot of property. He's traveling somewhere, okay, picking up his rope, his bowl, okay, toothbrush, a few simple things, maybe a needle and a thread and to repair his ropes, just in case, and then off he goes. So very easy. I see some for a few, also sometimes you're traveling, right? So can you fit everything just into a shoulder bag when you travel? All your luggage? No, huh? Need a full suitcase. 2 suitcases sometimes. 3 suitcases. When monks go on Tudong, they will go very light. Because everything you go, you travel, you hike, you have to carry it on your shoulders. So there's no point of bringing a lot of things along. Often, the first time when a monk, when he goes on Tudong, they also, I need this, I need that. They start to pack their bags, a big bag. But then, as you start walking, after 7 kilometers, 10 kilometers, 15 kilometers, it becomes very heavy. So then, after a day or 2, you see them already, I don't need this actually. No, this also I don't need. They give away half of their things on the way to other monasteries or somewhere on the way. And then you can see those who hike and go on Tudong a lot, they travel very light. Even they go into, sometimes even with a toothpaste or toothbrush, they don't even take a full tube of toothpaste, just half the tube. Toothbrush, a small toothbrush is enough. Everything is just minimalistic. So in this way, like a bird, flies with its wings as its only burden. So very nice. Also, if you want to travel, how long does it take to pack? How long does it take? 10 minutes? 2 days. 2 days. See? So of course, these are the standards for monastics, and also they are not rules, but then we can see a little bit how light life can be, how easy things can be when we simplify, when we practice contentment. Do you really need this? I remember back in Myanmar, when I went to Burma to become a monk, I also had a big backpack with me as a layperson. It was so big, I could barely carry it. When I put it on my back, it was pulling me back. I had to really make an effort to walk straight. So then, having arrived in Myanmar and unpack my bag, so I put the things into the cupboard in the small kuti that I had. And yeah, okay, it was nice. There was a shelf, a cupboard, and then another rack. And then after a while, I had an appointment with one of the senior monks. Actually, it was quite an inspiring monk to me. He looked quite ascetic. He was in his late 60s, probably 70 around, and very thin, only bones and skin. And so I had an appointment with him to meet him after the meditation session back in his kuti. And he said to me also, he might be a little bit late. No problem, if I'm there early, I can only go inside and wait for him. So I went over, it was 5 p.m. roughly. I went there, I cleared my throat, because that's how we signal we are there. They don't have alarm bells, or no clocks, no bells. So when you come to the kuti, you just just clear your throat. And then you wait, somebody coming. A second time, nobody coming. then I remember, of course, he said, he might be a bit late, but I can go inside. So actually I went inside just to wait for him. And yeah, he was not around. And I looked around actually, in the wrong kuti. That's not his kuti. Maybe the next door kuti. And then as I was on the way out, he was coming actually in my way. And he said, well, where are you going? Come, stay inside. And, are you living here? The kuti was empty. There was nothing there. There was no mattress. I mean, there was a very thin sheet, just a thin bamboo mat. But there were no personal belongings. There were no books. There were no items standing around. If I look at my kuti, I told you I came with this big backpack. All my shelves were full. The cabinet was full. He had nothing inside. I thought, wow, this is amazing. This monk is living here since, I don't know, 7 years or longer, and he has nothing in his kuti. Normally, the longer you stay at a place, the more things accumulate. After so long time, he still had nothing. And I didn't even see a towel. I thought, after taking a shower, later when I talked with him, are you not having a bathing towel? He said, I have one. He showed me a towel this size. And this is the towel he uses for everything, when he sweats or when he takes a shower. Then how can you dry yourself with such a small towel? Well, he just dries himself, and then he wrings it out, and dries him, continues, wrings it out 3 times, and then it was okay. Even it's a warm country, Myanmar, in summertime, it's okay. I was like, wow, one can live like this. I was very inspired, actually. So then I told him, my kuti, I cannot even show you. But then he offered his support. He said, okay, let's go over together. And then we went there, and do you still need this? I said, yeah, I need this, of course. And then I had a toolbox with screwdrivers and scissors and this and that. Do you need this? Well, not now, but I might need it later. No, I don't need it. So we were sorting out the things I need and those I don't need. But then it was okay. I could still keep most of my things. So then this time went on. But then I was so inspired by seeing his kuti. I thought, wow, it would be nice to live so simply. So then I came up with a method. I thought, every day I will go through my items. Every day I will just remove one thing only. One thing a day. I have, I don't know how many things in my kuti, maybe 70 or 100 different small things. So then I started with that practice. I will just think, do I need this? And if I haven't used it for a week or 2 weeks, probably I might also not need it in the next few weeks. And then if I really need something, I can always borrow it from the Sangha. I don't need to have a personal version of everything. So I also started to remove. And then, it took a while, but I think about half a year later, my kuti was almost like his kuti. Gradually, slowly, I was giving away one thing at a time. I was so happy. Every time I could give something away, gave it to another monk or to the storeroom. It was lighter, quite nice. So yeah, this is my inspiration from this monk I met there back in Burma. And I still have a lot of gratitude to him for showing me his kuti, which was so different from my own place. So yeah, that's why the Buddha speaks here about contentment. Contented with simple robes, alms food, wherever he goes or travels, he just takes these things with him. Doesn't have a lot of property. Possessing this aggregate of noble virtue, he experiences within himself a bliss, a joy that is blameless. A joy that doesn't come from eating the right food or seeing the right place or wonderful view. A bliss that comes from gratitude, contentment, peacefulness. It's very different from the happiness that comes from sense pleasures, eating, drinking, entertainment. So the Buddha encourages the monks or the monastics, live simply, live virtuously. And then you can experience a joy, a happiness that comes from inside, not from externals. And the happiness that comes from inside has a much better chance, or higher probability, that you can regenerate it and maintain it for a long time. Whereas most of the external circumstances, they change all the time. And they always depend on other people, on the environment, on the society. But if I can generate happiness from inside, I don't depend for my happiness from others so much. Wouldn't that be nice? What's the time? 1:30. Maybe one last message for today. So the Buddha encourages the monks for virtue, contentment, and then the Tathagata disciplines him further. Come, bhikkhu, guard the doors of your sense faculties. On seeing a form with the eye, seeing an object with the eye, here many objects, many interesting objects around. On seeing a form with the eye, do not grasp at its signs and features. Since, if you were to leave the eye faculty unguarded, evil, unwholesome states of longing, of craving, clinging, or grief might invade you, of desire or rejection. Practice the way of its restraint. Guard the eye faculty. Don't attach to visual objects. On hearing a sound with the ear, on smelling an odor with the nose, on tasting a flavor with the tongue, on touching a tangible with the body, or cognizing a mind object with the mind. Do not grasp at its signs and features, since if you were to leave these 6 faculties unguarded, evil, unwholesome states of longing or grief might invade you. Practice the way of its restraint. Guard the mind faculty. Undertake the restraint of the mind faculty. So sense restraint, 6 senses. What are the 6 senses? Seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking. Right. So, interestingly, when the Buddha speaks of sense pleasures, he speaks only of the 5 senses. Seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching. Not the mind included. But when he speaks of sense restraint, the mind is also included. It's quite interesting. One would think, why not, in both cases, 5 senses or 6 senses? And I think because the sense pleasures through the 5 senses, sure, most of them are physical, seeing something nice, hearing, related to external objects. But then even when we don't see or hear or taste, afterwards, the mind can still fantasize about them, isn't it? So sense restraint is not just not seeing, not hearing. It's also very important to restrain the mind, because otherwise the mind will dwell in fantasies, in wishes, in hopes and longings. So it's actually the mind that plays a very important role in sense restraint. You cannot always just close your eyes or ears and smell the nose. How can you even close your ears? Well, yeah, you could close them. But you cannot live your day in this way. But guarding the mind is very important. So yeah, sometimes we cannot avoid seeing, right? We are surrounded by interesting objects. Yet, we can avoid grasping at the features that are provocative of desire or aversion. So if you see a person, often for monastics, if you see an attractive person, you're married, but then you see another person who seems quite attractive in one way or another, then rather than focusing on the aspects of his body that is attractive, you could look more at the other parts of his body, or take the person as a whole without focusing on those aspects that are particularly enticing and provocative of desire or lust. Or the same also with negative emotions. If a person or an object is very repulsive, then rather than looking and highlighting those aspects and focusing on those aspects, one could focus on those aspects that are less repulsive. So, guarding the sense faculties. So again, this one goes already a little bit now into mental cultivation. This is beyond just being virtuous, but now it already goes into training of the mind. So not just 5 senses, but 6 senses. For example, if you want to live a contented life and not spend too much money on clothes and fashion and food, these kind of things. But then every time you go to KL, when you go into the city and you walk along the shopping malls, you go into every bakery and they have all these interesting shops where they have all these good things that are provocative of desire, then of course it's very difficult to practice sense restraint. So restraining the eye and not going to places where we are surrounded constantly by those objects that are the object of our desire, that makes it easier when we can avoid that. Well, like I said yesterday, if you have nothing in your fridge, it's quite easy to not feel too hungry and not constantly having to have a snack. But when you know the fridge is full with interesting things, then the mind will feel hungry every 2 hours, it seems. Hungrily. And speaking of food, the next paragraph is already about that. The Buddha says, "Come, bhikkhu, be moderate in eating, wisely reflecting, I use alms food." And then he explains, what is the purpose? What's the purpose of eating? What's the purpose of collecting food? Not for fun, not for pleasure, not for fattening. Fattening back in the days was actually a positive thing. When you were fat, that was almost a status symbol. It meant, oh, you can afford lots of food, and so it's a sign, almost like a symbol in society. Nowadays, fattening is not considered so attractive anymore, of course. But back in the days, the Buddha had to remind people, no, we're not eating to become fat. So, wisely reflecting, I use alms food, not for fun, not for pleasure, not for fattening, not for purification, but only for the nourishment and sustenance of this body, for keeping it healthy, but also for helping with the holy life. Thinking, by eating, I will remove the old feeling of hunger, but I will not give rise of the new feeling of tiredness, sluggishness, by overeating. So in this way, I will live blamelessly and at ease. So this is the reflection that the Buddha gives here. And many monks can memorize that in Pali, some can memorize maybe also in English, and we do that very commonly before we start eating. So when the monks eat together in a monastery, typically just before we start eating, first we set up everything, prepare the place, sitting down, and then before that we recite that often together. And some, what they also do, like even mentally, while eating, you could, with each mouthful, you could take one paragraph from here. I'm eating not for fun. Then chew. Not for pleasure. Not for fattening. So keeping that purpose of eating in mind. And of course, one doesn't have to be a monk for that, right? Because most of the things are still applicable, I think, for almost everyone, right? Not for pleasure, not for fun. Not for fun would be more like children are doing, they like to play around with the food. So have some grapes and then... So yeah, that would also not be appropriate. Not for fattening, not for purification, so to eat food so that the limbs are fully formed, or maybe like a bodybuilder would do, that it can be big, and so that's also not the purpose of eating, for beautification. Only for the maintenance and nourishment of this body, for keeping it healthy, for helping with their holy life. So as a support for the practice, not as an obstacle for the practice. Thinking, I will remove hunger without overeating. So in this way, I will continue to live blamelessly and at ease. So just imagine in the future, every time you eat, that is the back of your mind. Oh, let me remember, what is the purpose of eating? And then also knowing the right measure. The Buddha didn't say, eat only the bare minimum. No, some people need a bit more, some need a bit less. But then also know when to stop. Okay, enough for the day, it seems already quite full. Should be okay. What kind of foods would you say are the most difficult to abstain from indulging? What are the kind of foods where it's difficult to refrain? Cheese, dessert. Dessert. I understood cheesert. It's also quite good. Cheese also can be difficult to refrain. Dessert, yes, cakes, biscuits, right? Ice cream, donuts. Drinks, coffee, okay. So yeah, one can reflect, okay, why am I eating this? You can eat anything, basically. As long as you know, oh, I'm hungry. You could even eat a cake if you're hungry. Maybe not every day, not all the time as your main meal. But the Buddha didn't say certain foods just because it tastes good, you must not eat it. But know for which purpose. Oh, I'm eating for giving nutrition to the body, and then this way you don't have to be just eating only pure veggies and nothing else. So it can be a well-balanced meal, it can contain things that taste agreeable, that's okay. But then also knowing the right measure and knowing when to stop. In some suttas, it is mentioned that the Buddha recommends that one eat so much until there's still a little bit of space in the stomach, and then at the end he fills himself up with a cup of water. So I think with 4 sips of water, so he doesn't eat until he's completely full, okay. He cannot fit anything anymore. So he stops before that, and then if there's still a bit of room, take a sip of water, and then feeling nice afterwards. Okay, we are still not finished with the gradual training. So, but I think for today, that's how far we get. And then next time, whenever that is, we can continue with wakefulness, meditation, going into seclusion, purifying the mind. Going forth, renouncing, exactly. Any questions so far about what we've covered today? Yes?
Bhante, so for 5 precepts, it seems that is the Sila part. For 8 precepts, we're going into Bhavana, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cultivation of the mind.
Yes, 8 precepts are already beyond the basics. So there's already aspects there of not using cosmetics, perfumes, as we had just now, dancing, singing, music, also a bit avoiding luxurious sleeping places. So yes, that goes already into living a bit more simply, at least periodically, and reducing comforts that are not absolutely necessary. Yeah. So it's an additional practice. The basic for devotees, 5 precepts, if you can keep and maintain those, that's fantastic already. But if you can, on certain occasions, once a week, once in 2 weeks, also maintain the 3 extra precepts. What are they?
Third precept, celibacy.
Celibacy, yes.
No high places, perfume.
No high luxurious sleeping places.
Singing and dancing.
Dancing, singing, music, entertainment, perfumes, cosmetic, right. So once in a while, on a weekend probably, or at a certain day when you're free, this could be a good additional practice. Why on Uposatha days? Anyone knows? Why not on every Wednesday? Actually, interestingly, even the Devas, they seem to have a certain interest in how we humans are doing. And the Devas are actually quite, especially the Dhamma Devas, they delight if they see many humans doing virtuous acts and holding the Uposatha pure, keeping especially the full moon days and the new moon days. This is when they check, supposedly, on us. Why are they checking? Because, as you know probably from Buddhist cosmology, the Devas, the Dhamma and the Asuras, every now and then they will have a battle, a fight. And when the people do a lot of virtuous deeds, then they will go to heaven and be reborn in the Dhamma heavens. So there will be many people up there in the Dhamma. So for the next fight against the Asuras, they know, oh, people are very virtuous, we will be many, so we can maintain our good standing and can keep our ground. Next time when the Asuras attack us, they will have a strong army. Whereas if nobody keeps the precepts and all will be reborn in the lower planes of existence, they know, oh, it doesn't look good for us in the future. So they are particularly keen, it seems, to check on Uposatha days whether the people are keeping their precepts. upholding their virtuous standards, and therefore they then delight and rejoice in that. So they're quite happy to see when we practice accordingly. But of course, it doesn't mean that during other days of the week you cannot also keep your 5 precepts, or that we should not also maintain our virtue. So, of course, that's, for us personally, it's a wholesome, beneficial practice, regardless of whether others rejoice in it or not. But as an additional motivation or inspiration, we can consider, then also the devas up in the celestial planes rejoice in that and delight in our virtue. Also nice. Okay? So, keep it at that for today. Let us also share merit with our departed relatives and friends and all beings. Let us recite together and remember, idang me, idang no, idang wo. Idang me nyatinang hotu, sukhita hontu nyatayo. Idang no nyatinang hotu, sukhita hontu nyatayo. Idang wo nyatinang hotu, sukhita hontu nyatayo. Ettavata cha amhihi, sampadang punya sampadang, sabbe satta anumodantu, sabba sampatti siddhya. And lastly, let us also make an aspiration towards Nibbana. Idang me punyang, asavakkaya, vahang hotu. Idang me punyang, nibbanassa, paccaya hotu. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, Anumodana. Wish you a good afternoon and see you maybe again next week. Next Sunday we might be here again. Saturday is a super workshop. Saturday next week, not. Unless you want to see corpses. There's a workshop organized at the Xiao En Center here in KL, which myself and SPS are organizing for monastics from all over Malaysia. So we have an opportunity to see an autopsy on real bodies. So which is very rare in Malaysia to get an opportunity. So we have a good connection with the Professor Jin over there, and who will show the 31, 32 body parts that the Buddha speaks about in the suttas. So they will dissect the body, open up, and then show you the liver, the heart, take out the organs. You can inspect that. And that is particularly useful for monastics, because this is one of the practices that the Buddha recommends for overcoming desires, attachments, particularly to sense pleasures like food, sensual desires, sexual desires, fantasies. So if you think about the body, the inside of the body, there's nothing beautiful to be found there. It's actually quite repulsive. Not just the sight, also the smell. If you've ever been to an autopsy, you will know it. Sometimes the smell is even more repulsive than the visual impact. So we've invited monastics from all over Malaysia to join that event. This will be happening on Saturday, next weekend. But then on Sunday we'll come over with new inspiration from all the corpses. Okay, so see you then maybe next week. Sadhu, sadhu.